this thing on? Alright, good Erev Shabbos. I wanted to talk about things going on right now in the Holy Land. I think I've made it pretty clear. I'm not a Zionist. I don't support the concept of a Jewish state in the modern day under any circumstance, whether it's a religious state or a secular state. I think it's wrong. The secular state because it's secular, and the religious state because you need a Sanhedrin in order to have a true religious state. And really, for a lot of things, you really need prophets. And since a Sanhedrin would not be recognized by all the rabbis, particularly the rabbis who I follow, would not recognize a Sanhedrin unless it was convened by Eliyahu Navi himself, by Elijah the prophet, and by Mashiach. I guess, Eliyahu Navi would probably convene the Sanhedrin, and the Sanhedrin would decide who the Mashiach is. Bearing that, it's not going to happen. It's not going to be recognized, and I don't think it should be. I think we are an exiled people. We should recognize that and live as we have as pious Jews until the Messiah comes. And that's how we're supposed to live. And we're not supposed to have a Jewish state. And I don't think it would be healthy to have a state run by ultra-Orthodox Jews. You can use the no true Scotsman argument to say, well, anyone who supports the idea of a religious state is really not an ultra-Orthodox Jew. They're really religious Zionists, which is essentially modern Orthodox. They might be right-wing modern Orthodox. They might be what they call Chardal, like they seem to be like Haredim, but they're really Dati Leumi. But as far as their observance, they're Haredim. But to be intellectually honest, all the Haredish world, did not, even those who expressed some happiness about the state of Israel or some hope about the state of Israel, recognize that this is not the way things happen in Judaism. This is not the way Judaism works. We have to wait patiently for Mashiach to come before we can actually have an actual religious state. Rav Aaron Kotler, who was very supportive of voting in the state of Israel, a lot of things, he would not be considered an anti-Zionist by most standards. He would be considered the non-Zionist, the more moderate of view, according to how a lot of people view it. If you view that as moderate, it certainly would be considered somewhere. It's not the extreme of the anti-Zionists of Satmar or of Brisk, and it's not the extreme of the pro-Zionists. It's somewhere in the middle, politically. So I can see how that could be called moderate, meaning he did not believe in using the government to make people religious. He believed in maintaining the status quo and protecting the rights of the religious people to be religious, pretty much. That's how I understand his views in Israel. The Brisker Rav said it's not as big of a mitzvah to vote as Rav Aaron Kotler said. It's not as big of a sin to vote as the Satmar Rav said. But it's that just being said. But that being said, Rav Aaron Kotler also said that a religious state would be a bigger heresy than a secular state, because we know the secular don't believe in anything. The religious we're supposed to believe that Mashiach is coming, and the idea that we can do it ourselves, according to Rav Aaron Kotler, would be a heresy against that idea of waiting for the Messiah. And so it was more of a, practical, understanding. Yes, here we are. This state exists. There's nothing we can do about it. We have to deal with it the way that it exists, and that's it. And it's not our job to, try to decide what's right. It is what it is, and so how do we deal with it? That's kind of Rav Aaron Kotler's approach. So it's a non-Zionist approach. It's an approach that's saying, now that it exists, what do we do with it? And that would be, I would say, for a long time, that was the standard view of most of the ultra-Orthodox. I think the problem is that so many of the people in the ultra-Orthodox community are unaware of that, so they assume, since they're not Satmar, they must be pro-Israel or something. And it's not really, the issue is, all right, now that these Jews live here, we can't let them be in danger. That type of attitude. Although the fact is, they're in danger. The very fact of them being there puts them in danger. And that's the real issue. That's the real issue that the Samarov had. I mean, if you look at the oaths that the Samarov quoted, it's that this causes people to hate Jews. This causes Jewish lives to be in danger. To have a state of Israel, or to have a Zionist movement, even without a state of Israel, puts Jews in danger. And whether we say that that's the result of the sin of the lack of faith that Zionism includes, or it's just simply, a metaphysical fact or a political fact, because, I mean, we do see, politically speaking, the Jews lived in peace with Muslims for years in the Holy Land under the Turkish rule. It was only whenever the Jews started to talk about some form of sovereignty that the powers that be and the Ottoman Empire and so forth said, no, we're not going to allow that. We're fine if you want to live here peacefully and accept your status as dhimmis, and we'll let you live. But once you start to be an upstart, then we're going to either kill you or make you convert to Islam. And you saw it happen with Shabtai Tzvi. He asked the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire for permission to declare himself the king of the Jews in Jerusalem, and the Sultan gave him an ultimatum of death or conversion, and Shabtai Tzvi converted. So, this is a real major problem. So I do not support the idea of Kahanism in any form, because the idea of Kahanism is to make a religious state. But that being said, I also don't want to sit still while lies are being said against the Kahanists. Even though I oppose them, I do not believe that lies should be said about anybody. And the Torah tells us, midvar sheker tirchak. You should stay far away from any lies. And if I can say, if someone is truly a Kahanist, they would have to be following the teachings of Rabbi Meir Kahana, who I disagree with, but I do not label him a racist. I mean, the irony for the Zionists to label anybody a racist when the UN, the very UN that they claim gave them the permission to make their state, the UN said that they are racists. And they are racist, especially secular Zionists. The whole idea of secular Zionism is a racist idea, because the whole idea of a secular Jewish identity that's divorced from any religious source is racism. Because if you don't believe in the religion that tells you what Jewish identity means, so then your whole Jewish identity is essentially racist. I mean, the Jewish religion says someone who's born to a Jewish mother is Jewish, or someone who converts to Judaism in accordance with Jewish law is Jewish. That's what the Jewish religion says. If you don't believe in that religion, you don't even believe in God, so what does that mean? That someone is believing, someone identifies as Jewish when they don't even believe in God. I, as a believing Jew, can say, yes, this person unfortunately is an atheist, but unfortunately they're Jewish, according to Jewish law, which means that according to Jewish law, they are required to repent, although it's not even so clear that we allow them to repent, if you really study the Jewish law. But for the most part, we generally will say that most of the people today who are Jewish atheists have a din of tinuk shenishbo. According to Jewish law, they're considered that it's not their fault. It's out of ignorance. Really, halachically speaking, it's a very difficult argument to make, and certainly the Brisker Rav did not accept that. He said, "Nebuch and Apikoros is Ochan Apikoros." Someone who is unfortunately out of ignorance a heretic still is considered a heretic, and we really don't believe in bringing back heretics. If you really study the Jewish law, you're not allowed to teach a Talmud Sheinu Hakum. You're not allowed to teach an improper disciple. Although Maimonides does say, if you are able to bring them back into the fold, then you can teach them. You can't teach them before that. And why? Because they're going to use their knowledge to further their heresy. So you can't just accept anybody into a yeshiva. They have to first repent before they can come back. And it's not our job really so much to run after them. Although again, it seems from Maimonides there is some room to say that we should try to influence people to repent. But it's very, very difficult. But until they repent, they are heretics. They're not part of the Jewish community. They don't really become Gentiles. Although there was even someone once asked me, well, can you lend ribbis? Are you halachically allowed to practice usury? I mean, I won't use the term usury. Lend on credit with interest. The Jewish law says you're allowed to lend on interest to a non-Jew, and you're not allowed to lend on interest to a Jew. The way I once heard Rabbi Gottlieb from Or Sameach explain it would be, there's nothing inherently immoral about lending on interest as long as you don't go, practice immoral practices, what they call predatory lending. But the why? Because the same thing, if you rent somebody your car, well, there's nothing immoral about renting letting someone rent a car from you. So the same thing, lending on interest is renting your money. However, if your brother wants to borrow your car, and you say, no, I'm going to rent it to you. I'm not going to let you just borrow it. Well, there's obviously something wrong there. You know, your brother, you should just let him borrow your car. You know, I mean, if he does some damage or whatever, or you might want to have him pay for the gas or whatever. That's not immoral, but just you know, yeah, you can borrow my car. You're my brother, and Jews are supposed to see each other as brothers and sisters. That being said, we're brothers and sisters in faith. It's not just because we have a bloodline that goes back to Jacob. It's that we are brothers and sisters in faith. And so if somebody does something to insult the family, bring dishonor to the family, they can be disowned. And then their children are also disowned until they come back. But the thing is, we do welcome people, everybody who wants to accept the Torah, because it's really not even about our ancestry to Jacob, but it's about that we stood at Sinai, and our ancestors stood at Sinai, or one of our ancestors or ourselves accepted the Torah according the same way they did at Sinai, by converting. So it's not a racial issue. It's a devotion to God issue. That's what makes us brothers and sisters. Just like the same thing the Muslims refer to the members of the Ummah, which is not a lineage issue. It is a, you know, a belief issue. Meaning, it doesn't matter what race you are, although there is certainly some favoritism to Arabs in Islam, but there are many Muslims who are not Arabs, including Turks and Iranians and Malaysians. I'm saying, you know, that are ethnically from, you know, Muslim majority countries. And so too, anybody from any race, it could be white, black, Chinese, doesn't matter, can convert to Islam. And they call each other brothers and sisters, and they call each other members of the Ummah, like we say, Am Yisrael. And the same thing, the Am Yisrael, it's not about the bloodlines, it's about a devotion to God. And so too, someone who is a kufir is not a Muslim and not part of the Ummah. In Islam, it's the same thing in Judaism. Someone who's a kafir, it's the same word, is not part of the Am Yisrael. And the same thing in Christianity. If you don't believe in Jesus, you're not part of the body of Christ. You know, and then even among certain Christians, there are different beliefs. There are certain forms of the Baptist tradition that believe in a trail of blood that goes back to John the Baptist. And that, you know, you have to have some kind of apostolic succession, and so too the Catholics believe in apostolic succession, and the Orthodox Christians believe in apostolic succession, and the what do you call it, the Anglican communion believes in apostolic succession to a certain point. So too in Judaism we have the Messiah. It's essentially apostolic succession that goes back to Moses. It's not the issue of bloodlines, but the issue of, meaning, if someone converts, you know, is there a rabbi there who can trace back his smicha, essentially, even though we don't have the traditional smicha, the full ordination, but still some sort of Masorah that your Rebbe has to his Rebbe, that can go back to Moshe Rabbeinu. That meaning, if I receive the Het HaTorah from my Rav, Rabbi Fishbane, and he received his Het HaTorah from Rav Gusman or from Rav Pam, and they could trace back, you know, to Moshe Rabbeinu, and there's a recorded Masorah that goes back to Moshe Rabbeinu to this day. We have that in Judaism, in Orthodox Judaism, we have that. And that's what gives us, that's what, makes us Jews. It's the same idea as the apostolic succession that we have, but we call it our Masorah, that goes back to Moses. And so that's why, we encourage, at least to me, if someone wants to claim the mantle of Judaism, you should have a connection to Orthodox rabbis who have an authentic Masorah that goes back to Moshe Rabbeinu, to Moses. It's not just a free-for-all, and that's why, for example, you'll have people who identify as the Hebrew Israelites, and among the Hebrew Israelites you have different factions. You have some factions that are pretty much Christian. Among those you have some that are extremely racist, and then you have some factions that are pretty much traditional Jews, but since they don't have that apostolic succession, they should undergo Gir L'Chumrah and so forth the way, for example, Casper Fournier, although his conversion was conservative, I don't know if it was a more traditional conservative or something like that, but he should probably seek out an Orthodox conversion. Ideally, the problem is a lot of the Orthodox, they take the concept of Masorah to an extreme, meaning Masorah that we have is the Masorah that goes back really to the Sanhedrin, to the times of the Mishnah. That's what we can identify as binding on all Jews. We're not obligated to turn every convert into an Ashkenazi or a Sephardi necessarily, but the issue is it's difficult to invent something new the way that many of the more Jewish style Hebrew Israelite or black Jews or something, they want to invent their new Masorah. It's much easier. That term of Masorah, that they have their minhag, that's their community's minhag, and it's not that easy to, like, for example, connect to the Ethiopian minhagim and see what their minhagim really are. That we have to have some kind of a traditional form, and so many of the Ethiopians don't, and they really have to figure out, what is their minhag, and so the same thing would be with the black Jewish communities. We're happy to accept them, and if they want to maintain their special culture in a certain sense, I don't have a problem with that, but we need guidance from somebody with bigger shoulders than me, and it can't just be, well, this is what they do. They have to, at the very least, have some sort of haskama, I would say, on what their practices are. Meaning, if they want to develop their own siddur, that's their own nusach, where is it coming from? It's not a free-for-all. Now, by us, the different tzaddikim have different siddurim. They do have different ways of interpreting how the siddur should be, but it has to follow a certain rubric. I have friends of mine who have tried to reduce the siddur to the lowest common halachic denominator. Is how I would say, meaning to say, this is what's absolutely required. You want to add a little more, maybe there's room, maybe there's not, whatever. But it's not a free-for-all. It's not like how the Reform just, make up their own siddur, and they don't want to have, the what is it called? The, Tchias HaMesim mentioned in the siddur, things like that. That's already heretical. All right, we can discuss different things there, but all this being said, I want to get back to this issue of Kahanism. So, one of the issues I have with Meir Kahane is, first and foremost, his Zionism, his belief in a Jewish state, his support for the Jewish state. He even went so far as to teach that, you should say Hallel with a bracha on He'iyar. And he said it doesn't matter that the founders of the state were total heretics, it was still a miracle from God. And I think that is highly problematic. I might not say it's heresy, but it certainly borders on heresy to teach that, and it's definitely what I would say it's highly, highly problematic. But he was essentially an Orthodox rabbi. He was briefly a Rav in a shul, didn't really work out. In Howard Beach, Queens, he was the Rav. And he opened the yeshiva. Alright, so he's a shtickler Rosh Yeshiva. That's not a big deal. The same thing being a Chassidish Rebbe, also not a big deal. Doesn't make you a Gadol B'Yisrael that you're such and such a Rebbe. And those Rebbes will admit it. Meaning, you ask a Chassidish Rebbe a question, they're going to say that's certain questions. They're going to say that's a question for a Dayan, that's a question for a Poisik, that's a question for a Gadol B'Yisrael. It's not a question for me. I'm just, a Rebbe. And I've heard that firsthand from Chassidish Rebelach, and it's good. That's an honest answer. You're supposed to be humble, and you have to understand there's certain things. You ask a Dayan, you don't ask a Rebbe, and there's certain things you ask a Rebbe, you don't ask a Dayan, and there's certain things you have to ask both a Rebbe and a Dayan, and you have to understand. What one where. Like I remember one of my Rebbeim, Moshe Weinberg, he told a story about how he was trying to get to ask a Shaila. He didn't, the shul said, because, there's so many people want to hear Shabbos HaGadol Drasha or Shabbos Shuvah Drasha, they asked if he could say it Motzei Shabbos. And he wanted to ask both a Paisik. I don't remember what the Paisik was. Who he asked, maybe Reb David Cohen or someone, I'm not sure. And he wanted to ask a Rebbe. And he was asking one of the Balabatim, who has a big kesher to the Square Rebbe. He wanted to know from Square Rebbe, from a Rebbe'she point of view. Meaning, even if halachically it's okay, but as a Chassidish Yid, is this the proper way? The fact of the matter is the Saparov didn't say Shabbos Shuvah Drasha. He's Shabbos HaGadol Drasha when he was in America. In Europe he did, because he was hired as the Rav. When he came to America, he wasn't called the Williamsburger Rav, he was called the Saparov. Because, meaning this, he used to be the Rav in Europe. In America, he led the Kehillah, but he was independent. He was an entrepreneur. He wasn't hired by the Kehillah the way he was in Europe. He was his own boss, and so he, he felt that he knew who he was. He knew he was popular and famous in Williamsburg. But he believed very much. One thing Samarov was very supportive of was other Rabbanim, other Rebbes. He really always tried to give chizik to other Rebbes, to other Rabbanim. It was well known that the Baba Rebbe was thinking of dropping the whole Rebbe shtick and going into business and everything. And the Samarov said, absolutely not. You cannot do that. You have to. The Galicianer need a Rebbe, and that's going to be. And they need you. And so, Baruch Hashem, we have a beautiful Kehillah Bobov. A lot of it is because of the Satmar Rebbe, because he gave chizik to the Baba Rebbe to open the Kehillah, to continue what he was doing, and to keep this alive in America, and that's what he did. And when I say Rebbe shtick, I don't mean that disrespectfully. I just, he would have still been a big tzaddik if he would have been, a businessman. But no one would know. He would be a Lamed Vav tzaddik, a hidden tzaddik that nobody would know about. But he went into the Rebbe business and was very successful at it. And it was, one of the biggest tzaddikim we had. And now we all know about it because the Samarov, the same thing, Munkacher. He was a bacher, and there were issues at home with his father, and so his mother had to run away, and so Samarov made sure that the Munkacher Rebbe would grow up and be a Rebbe. But he also told him he should go learn in Telz, but he gave him a tremendous covet, even when he was whenever he would visit Brooklyn, Samarov would sit him right next to him by the tish. So there's a recognition that there need to be more Rebbes, more Rabbanim, and so Samer Rebbe, he understood that if he would give a Shabbos Agadol drasha before Mincha, Shabbos Shuvah drasha before Mincha, there would be a lot of Rebelach all around Williamsburg who wouldn't even have a minyan. So he spoke in Yonam of Shabbos Shuvah, Shabbos Agadol by Shalashudas, when he would always say Torah anyway. But he didn't give a drasha before davening, before mincha. I guess that's probably when he did it in Europe. I don't know if he did it then or if he did it before Kriyas Torah or after Kriyas Torah by Shachar or something. I'm not sure. In Queens, we would go in the morning before Shachris. Before Kriyas Torah, after Shachris. The Ulam Harav would say Shabbos Shuvah Drasha, and there would be many Balabatim who daven by the Himnaruv who would daven there that morning by Ulam Harav, and then they want to hear Drasha in Yiddish, and the Ulam Harav is a sweet tzaddik, very fine person, and that was he should be well. He should have Shlema. And he's I love him very much. I used to go to Tish Friday night. It was so sweet, real authentic Chassidish Tish. And the Himner of, I would go Shalashidas when I was in Bacher, Queens. But anyway, the whole Queens would come, to hear the Himner's Shabbos Shuvah, Shabbos Agadol Drasha. And so they understood that they can't do it at the same time because they're attracting a lot of the same type of people, So that was the story. And even I remember once the Rav's son was by Ulmer of the morning for Shabbos Agadol, Shabbos Shumadrasha, So. Let's go back to what we were talking about. So the point I was saying is certain things for a dayan, and certain things for a rebbe, and certain things, all right, a local rabbi can paskin on his own, he knows how to learn. But my Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Braunspiegel, Shafu Shlema, he said, if someone asks him a shaila, Yali V'yava, he'll paskin on him. But usually he likes to talk to someone else and learning before he paskins. He doesn't really like to paskin shailas. He likes to leave it to dayanim, rabbanim, even though he was a rav was medrash for years. And that's a tremendous Rosh Hashiva, tremendous Talmud Chacham. But he doesn't like to paskin shailas, and also I don't like to paskin shailas. I hate it. I remember I was a rav in Richmond, and the people from the other shul, they would call me shailas basar b'chalav teruvas, and you daven in the other shul, you call this lady, she's a shtickl chassidish or Lubavitch or whatever. So you have a Lubavitcher rabbi. She knew not to ask him. He doesn't paskin with shilas. Simple shilas, and we know the halachas. If you learned in yeshiva, you know that it's not they're not difficult shilas. But all right. So shaila and basar b'chalav. So they would call me. And I hated it. I wanted to be a guy. I just want to say drushes and do kiruv. I didn't want to and say shirim, but I didn't want to paskin shilas. I don't like to do that, but no, it's part of the job. You're a rav in the shul. You have to paskin shilas. But the funny thing was, the people in my own shul didn't call me to paskin shilas. The people in my shul would call Rav Heinam in Baltimore, and the people in the other shul who had a fine Talmud Chacham as a Rav, someone who certainly is a Mora Ra and was capable of paskening shilas, and they would call me. No. But that was the Maisa. That was what I remember. So anyway, the thing is, the question is, was Meir Kahana Yid who could paskin? All right, he could paskin a shaila and basar b'chalav, sure. But the big types of questions that he dealt with and that he wanted to paskin on, and to just open up Hilchas Malachim and say that that's the way we're going to live today, it doesn't work that way, But the thing is, I saw a video once. He was speaking at YU, and they asked. It's on YouTube. You could probably find it. They asked him. They said, about different things. He said, if you're modern Orthodox, you should be a Zionist. That was a typical thing he would say. He said, you have a TV in your house. How can you not be a Zionist? Which is a stupid thing to say, because one thing has nothing to do with the other. But he's like, why are you quoting me Rav Shach? He would say that to young high school kids. Why are you quoting me Rav Shach if you have a TV in your house? It doesn't work that way. I'm sorry, but that's a stupid thing to say. I'm just putting that out there. It's intellectually dishonest, and it's avoiding the question. I don't think, I don't know if Rav Soloveitchik had a TV in his house. I don't think he did. I don't think Rav Aaron Lichtenstein had a TV in his house. And I don't have TV, but I have internet, and I have a Roku box that attaches to a regular television set, and I do watch videos on the internet. You know, mostly just like old movies and stuff. It helps me relax. It's a waste of time. It's a stupid thing for me to do, but it's something I do. But I admit to it. It's probably wrong. I probably shouldn't do it. But that's who I am. I have to do tshuva. You know, but I don't have like TV. You know, mostly I'm watching, you know, YouTube videos, you know, usually political videos, sometimes religious videos, you know, Torah Anytime, good stuff on there. But I like old movies. I'm sorry, you know. I know a lot of Rabbanim, they like sports. I don't like sports, but I like, you know, I can, you know, want to relax, want to watch Charlie Chaplin, or I want to watch Godzilla or Dracula or something, or Wolfman, you know. They're clean movies and stuff, and I'm, you know, but it's a waste of time. I should be learning. And half the time when I have the TV on, I have a safer with me too. Just I like to have noise in the background. You know, or it just helps me. You know, I like Mystery Science Theater 3000. You know, I like to watch Svengoolie and The Simpsons. But whatever it is, it's a sin. I gotta repent of. It's I'm an imperfect person. But anyway, that's how I grew up, but I also grew up eating at McDonald's, but I don't do that. All right, so take things one thing at a time. When I started, you know, I just, you know, I would eat at McDonald's, but I wouldn't eat a cheeseburger, you know, and then eventually I worked my way up, you know, and, you know, so the same thing, you know. So now, Baruch Hashem, I don't eat at McDonald's. I haven't eaten at McDonald's in 20 years, you know, and more than that now, 22 years, 23 years. But I for a while I didn't watch TV, but you know, I had to be realistic, you know. Like I remember, you know, when we were in Israel, in Yerushalayim, learning, and we went away to Tzfas to a hotel, and in the lobby, the hotel, Gilligan's Island was on, and all the guys were excited to watch Gilligan's Island. And the Manal, he said, you know, you guys got to be really, you know, desperate to watch TV that you're chalishing over Gilligan's Island. But I love Gilligan's Island, you know, even though it's not probably the best thing to look at. So usually, again, I don't usually look. I usually look at my safer and I listen. But it's, you know, but I remember meeting Dawn Wells, who played Mary Ann on Gilligan's Island. You know, I met her once. I have her autograph. So anyway, she was a very nice person, very polite, very kind person. So all right. So these are my sins. I gotta overcome it. The same thing my Rosh Hashiva said. You know, when he was a kid, he loved the cowboy movies. You know, he grew out of it eventually, but I haven't grown out of it yet. I'm sorry. You know, maybe someday, maybe not. Who knows? So I'll repent on my deathbed. You know. You know, and I love to go to these conventions and stuff, and it's fun. And again, people have to have an outlet. They always say you always hear the yeshiva Shavelt. You have to have an outlet. You know. You know, maybe I'm wrong. I know I'm wrong. I'm not saying maybe I'm wrong. I'm wrong, but so let me be wrong for this. So, but anyway, what's his name? Mayor Kahana. They asked him, you know, is the Satmar Rebbe treif? Well, chutzpah to ask, you know. He said, no, chas v'sholom, of course not. He said he personally disagrees. He follows different shitas, but the Satmar shita is 100% kosher. That's what Mayor Kahana said. It's just he follows a different shita. And they said, and the example he gave, he said, we don't have a Sanhedrin today, which I'm glad that he admits that. And and therefore, all right, so we don't have a Sanhedrin. So if all the Gedolei Yisrael had one psak, and the Belzer Rav had a different psak, what do you think the Belzer Chassidim would do? I'll give you two guesses, is what he said. And he said they'd be right, because they're supposed to follow their Rebbe. And then they asked Meir Kahane, so who's your Rebbe? And he said, I know how to learn on my own. I don't have to ask every shaila, which I think is wrong, especially when it's dealing with earth-shattering national issues. He can't just paskin whatever he wants. But he said that he would ask the chief rabbi. I met him once, Mordechai Eliyahu, the Sephardic chief rabbi, and actually there's haskamas to some of Meir Kahane's books. Most of his books have no haskamas, but his religious books do, and the haskamas from Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, who was a big Talmid Chacham. He was a Zionist, though, but he knew how to learn. Hold on, so I'm going to pause this. All right, is it going again? All right. So someone told me that Meir Kahane, he lived in Mathersdorf, that he would also ask shilas from Rav Scheinberg. That's the kind of Baruch I also met, and I remember actually once seeing both Rav Scheinberg and Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, Zechronim Levracha, at a chasana in Yerushalayim. So memories I have from Yerushalayim. So I don't know if it's true or not that he would ask him. Mistama, he would ask him shilas, regular shilas. I don't think he was asking him these national issues that he would. And there's no haskamas from Rav Scheinberg to anything that Meir Kahane ever wrote. The only haskamas I ever saw were from Rav Mordechai Eliyahu. Anyway, so he recognized that anti-Zionist Judaism is just as kosher as his Zionist Judaism, which is saying something, because a lot of the religious Zionists see it as if you're not a Zionist, you're treif. I told you the story from 2 weeks ago. The guy who was here, who said, that basically I'm not a real Jew because I'm not a Zionist. And so all that being said, though, with Meir Kahane, he would never say such a thing. He felt that the Neturei Karta, who went together with the Arabs, might be problematic. That it's already he understood to be an Indian of Masira, and I know a lot of mainstream people would say that. I don't think it's true. I think it's foolish, a lot of the things they do, but I don't think it falls under Masira or anything like that. But the mainstream Satmar have nothing to do with the Neturei Karta. And it's not just the first thing a lot of people say, the Neturei Karta, they're not Hasidish, they're Litvish. In Yerushalayim, that's true, but in America, they're mostly Hasidish. I mean, Moshe Ber grew up in a Hasidish home, and he was actually a Vishnitzer Chassid, but obviously he's not now. It's it is what it is. So anyway, what was I saying here? So what do people always say about Kahane? They say he was a racist. They love to scream racist. They don't even know what the word racist means. I mean, racist has to do with race. And like Meir Kahane always said, as an Orthodox rabbi, he would have to admit that if Arafat would convert to Judaism tomorrow, he would be just as Jewish as Kahana. And it's true. That's true. So, I don't know what else I could say about that. I agree with that. And that being said, it shows that, Mayor Kahana himself was not a racist. All right, so that's basically the crux of what I spent 50 minutes talking about. Is Mayor Kahana is not a racist because he wasn't. he might have been a religionist, but not a racist. All right. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. And he didn't hate the Arabs. He always said, "I don't hate the Arabs. I wish them well elsewhere." And he even he taught that Muslims could be considered to be ger toshav, even without abandoning Islam. They could practice their religion in Israel according to his understanding of halacha, because he understands Islam to be a religion that is monotheist, which, the Satmar Rebbe called Islam Avodah Zarah. So that's an aspect of this as well. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. So he was not against Islam being practiced, meaning if Muslims in Israel want to pray 5 times a day, as long as they don't, tell the Jews what to do, he was fine with that. But he would put them essentially, what you have to understand is a ger toshav is the same like what the Muslims call a dhimmi, pretty much. We have to protect them, but they can't boss us around. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing the Muslims, he wanted to pretty much make Israel a Jewish state the way the Muslim countries are Muslim states. I disagree with that. I don't think it's practical today. But halachically, in an ideal world, you could talk about something like that, but we're not living in that type of world. And I don't want to live in that type of world until Mashiach comes. I don't want people deciding, to follow these things now. All right, God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, all of this.